The year was 2320. Humans had finally reached deep space and made peaceful contact with many alien races. But the Varelians were different. They were quiet, intelligent, and elegant. They didn't trust outsiders easily. Now, Earth was sending a special team to make real peace with them. The large ship Horizon moved slowly through the dark space. Its goal, the Varelian capital ship, Solari Star, floating just outside a glowing nebula. On board the Horizon was a team of diplomats, scientists, and one quiet translator, Elias Hart. Elias wasn't a soldier, he wasn't famous. He was just good with languages. That's why they chose him. The Varelians spoke in soft tones and used energy patterns that were hard for machines to translate. But Elias had studied their language for years. He understood the emotion behind their words. He had never met a Varelian in person. Until now, the Horizon docked with the alien ship. Bright lights and smooth silver walls greeted the humans. The Varelians stood tall and calm, their skin like silver glass, their eyes glowing blue. They moved with grace, almost like they were floating, and at the front of the group stood her Commander Ilari. She was taller than Elias. Her long white hair shimmered under the light. Her armor was light and smooth, almost part of her skin. She looked both strong and peaceful. Her eyes met Elias's for just a moment, and that was enough. His heart jumped. His chest felt tight. He had seen pictures of Varelians, read their books, watched their videos. But none of it had prepared him for this. She wasn't just beautiful. She was majestic. The humans and Varelians greeted each other in their own ways. The officers talked, plans were shared. Words of peace were spoken. Elias stood quietly in the back, recording and translating everything. Hours later, the meeting ended. Most of the officers left the chamber. Elias stayed behind, checking his tablet. The room was nearly empty now, quiet and peaceful. He looked at the place where Ilari had stood. The memory of her face, her voice, her eyes, it all came back, and, without thinking, he whispered to himself, "She's so beautiful. I wonder if she'd marry me." He smiled at how silly it sounded. Of course it was just a thought. Just a whisper. He was sure no one could hear it, but behind him, just out of sight, Ilari paused. Her ears, sharper than human ears, had caught the soft sound. She didn't move. She just listened. She heard every word. And though her face stayed calm, a tiny spark lit behind her eyes. The next day, Elias went to the language center to begin translation work. Ilari was there, waiting with her team. She greeted the humans politely, but her eyes lingered on Elias for a little longer, he noticed. His face turned a little red. He wasn't sure why. As the day passed, Elias worked on translating Old Varelian text and helped officers understand small language errors. But he kept thinking about what he had said. Did someone hear me? He wondered. No one was near me. It was just a whisper. Still, every time Ilari looked at him, his heart beat faster. Later that evening, Elias sat alone in the ship's small garden chamber. Artificial plants and stars above gave him a moment of peace. He needed to clear his head. But then the door opened. It was Ilari. She stepped in slowly, not saying anything at first. Then she walked to the bench and sat beside him, calm and quiet. Elias froze. Ilari looked ahead, then turned to him. "I heard you," she said softly. Elias blinked. "What?" She tilted her head. "When you whispered, you said I was beautiful. And you wondered if I would marry you." Elias's heart stopped. His mouth opened, but no words came out. His face turned red. He wanted to vanish. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable," he said quickly. "I was just thinking out loud." Sorry." But Ilari did not look angry. "I am not offended," she said. "I am curious," Elias blinked. "Curious?" Humans use words in strange ways. But your words were honest, kind. Not many speak that way. There was a long silence between them. "The stars above seemed to shine a little brighter." Elias finally said, "I didn't mean anything wrong. I just thought you were amazing." "I've never met anyone like you." Ilari looked at him closely. "Nor have I met anyone like you," she replied, and then she stood and left. Her footsteps silent, Elias sat there, confused and amazed. He had whispered a secret, but now, that secret had opened a door he never expected. The next morning, Elias woke up early. His mind was still thinking about last night. He sat on his bed, staring at the small silver plant near the window. The memory of Valerie's calm voice echoed in his head. "I heard you." "I'm curious." She hadn't laughed. She hadn't gotten angry. Instead, she said she was curious. What did that mean? Elias wasn't sure, but he knew one thing. She didn't treat him like he was foolish. He got dressed and walked to the main control room. Today, they had more translation work to do. The humans and Varelians were preparing to share their historical records. It was an important step for both sides. When Elias entered the room, he saw Ilari already standing near the holographic table. She was looking at a floating image of Earth's moon. Her white hair shimmered like soft light. She turned slowly when she sensed his presence. "Good morning, Elias Hart," she said. He smiled nervously. "Good morning, Commander Ilari." She studied him for a moment. "May I call you Elias?" He nodded quickly. "Yes, of course, and you may call me Ilari," she said. "I do not enjoy ranks during quiet talks." Elias felt his heart beat faster. She wanted to talk to him, not as a soldier but as a person. That was rare. They began working on the translation of a Varelian poem. It was long and full of soft energy tones, which meant emotions rather than exact words. Elias found it fascinating. He tried his best to understand the meaning. "This part," he said, pointing to a flowing line of text, "is like longing, a kind of deep hope, right?" Ilari looked impressed. "Yes, that is correct." "Very few understand that emotion in our writing," Elias smiled. "It feels similar to a human love song. We use words like "I miss you" or "I wait for you." Ilari tilted her head. "Interesting. We sing feelings through light and music. Words are not always enough for us," Elias nodded. "Sometimes words aren't enough for humans either." They shared a quiet moment. Then Ilari asked, "Why did you say that I was beautiful? Was it because I looked different? Or because I looked similar to something you liked?" Elias blinked. He hadn't expected that question. I said it because when I saw you, I felt something special," he said honestly. "You look strong, calm, but also kind. It wasn't just how you looked, it was how you were." Ilari didn't speak for a moment. Then she said, "In my culture, we rarely speak so openly. Feelings are shown in actions, not in words." "That's different for us," Elias replied. "Humans often hide feelings, but sometimes we let them out with a whisper." She gave a small smile. The first he had seen from her. "Perhaps your whisper was not so small," she said. "It reached me clearly." Just then, the door opened. 2 Earth officers entered, followed by Varelian advisors. The serious tone returned to the room. Elias and Ilari returned to their tasks, but the connection between them had already changed. Later that day, the Horizon's garden chamber was filled with quiet music. Ilari was there again, standing beside the glowing tree. She seemed deep in thought. Elias entered, holding a small datapad. He was surprised to see her. "Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt." "You are not," she said. "I enjoy this place." He walked closer. "Do you miss your home?" he asked. She looked at the stars above. "Yes, but I also feel something new here. Something I have not felt before." Elias stood beside her. "What's that?" "Curiosity," she said, "about humans, about you." Elias felt his cheeks grow warm. She looked at him gently. "You are not like the others. Most speak with pride. You speak with truth." "That is rare," Elias smiled. "I just say what I feel, even when I don't mean to say it out loud." "You spoke of marriage," she said softly. "That is a human bond, yes?" He nodded. "Yes, it means choosing someone to walk through life with, to share everything with. It's not easy, but it's honest." "And you thought of this with me?" she asked, voice calm. Elias took a deep breath. "It was just a thought, but yes, I thought, if such a thing was possible, maybe you'd be the one I'd choose." Ilari did not move for a moment. Then she said, "I do not understand everything about humans, but I would like to learn more." Elias looked into her eyes. I'd like that too. As they stood together under the stars, neither of them spoke. But in the silence, something beautiful was growing, something more than curiosity. Elias walked through the long hallway of the horizon, deep in thought. Every step felt lighter than the last. His quiet talk with Ilari in the garden stayed in his mind. She didn't push him away. She didn't laugh. In fact, she had said something important. I would like to learn more. It wasn't a promise. It wasn't love. But it was a beginning. He smiled as he entered the cultural lab, where both human and Varelian symbols were being studied. Today, they would compare family traditions between the two species. It was part of building peaceful understanding. Ilari was already there, standing beside a large digital screen. She wore a long robe now instead of armor. Her hair was tied back with silver threads, and her calm presence filled the room. When Elias entered, she gave a small nod. "Good morning, Elias," she said gently. "Good morning, Ilari." The other officers and scientists soon joined them. Captain Mora, a strong Earth diplomat, started the discussion. We will each present our traditional values. Let's remember, we're here to respect differences, not judge them. The Varelians began. They showed images of heart-bonding ceremonies where energy ribbons connected two beings. The bonding was not only between lovers, sometimes between friends or parents and children. It was a quiet event full of shared light and music. Humans then presented their own customs, weddings, family gatherings, promises made with rings, flowers, or simple words. Laughter, music, food, these were part of every happy moment. Some Varelians looked surprised. Their culture was more silent and calm. Human emotions looked loud, even messy to them. One Varelian elder said softly, "Humans express too much. Feeling in public, we find this confusing." Captain Mora frowned slightly but replied calmly, "It's just how we are." Emotion is a part of life for us. Elias saw tension rising. He knew where this could go. Small misunderstandings could turn into big problems, but Ilari stepped forward. She looked at both groups and spoke clearly. "I have begun learning about human emotion through my time with Elias." Everyone turned toward Elias in surprise. He froze in place. She continued. He spoke with truth and kindness. His words were not for show. They were a reflection of his heart, and in doing so, he helped me understand his people more. Some Varelians looked at each other, confused. One whispered, "He spoke to you with emotion?" Ilari nodded. He whispered that I was beautiful, that he wished for something more. Elias's face turned red. He thought about running out of the room. But he didn't. He stood there, heart beating fast. Ilari added, "I was not offended. I was touched." His words were like a gentle song. I listened. There was silence in the room. For a moment, no one knew what to say. Then one Earth officer, a young woman named Dr. Lin, smiled. "Well," she said, "maybe that's exactly what peace is. One kind word shared across a galaxy." The tension softened. A few chuckles followed. Even the Varelian elders seemed to relax. Later, as the meeting ended, Ilari walked beside Elias toward the observation deck. The stars outside were shining brightly. The two stood side by side, looking out into the endless dark sky. "You were brave today," she said. "I felt more nervous than brave," Elias replied with a small laugh. "But, thank you," Ilari looked at the stars. "There is something else I have not told you. Some Varelians believe that bonding with another species is dangerous. They think it breaks our energy pattern." Elias looked at her. "Is that what you believe?" She paused before speaking. "I do not know yet, but I do know that I feel something new when I am with you. And that feeling has not hurt me." Elias smiled softly. "Feelings aren't dangerous, they just make us human." She looked at him with those glowing blue eyes. "And what do they make me?" He thought for a moment, then said, "They make you close." She said nothing. But she did not move away. The next day, whispers began to spread across both ships. Some humans noticed how often Ilari and Elias worked together. Some Varelians questioned her growing connection with a human. There were quiet talks. Behind closed doors, some officers felt nervous, some felt curious, and some felt afraid, but Ilari and Elias didn't stop meeting. They continued to share ideas, language, and quiet words because something was growing, something more than peace. More than understanding. It was a bond neither side expected. And bonds, once formed, can change the future. The silence of space was peaceful, but peace did not last long. A week had passed since Elias and Ilari began working closely together. Their bond was growing stronger every day. They shared language lessons, cultural knowledge, and quiet moments beneath the stars. Elias taught her how to read human poems. Ilari showed him how to feel music and the soft lights of Varelian crystals, but not everyone was happy. Some Varelian warriors, especially from the Varelian High Guard, began sending warnings. They believed Ilari was becoming too close to a human. For them, this was dangerous. They believed in pure Varelian traditions, no bonding with outsiders, no changes to their way of life. Their message was simple: return to us. End this connection or face judgment. Ilari received the message in her private chamber. She read it slowly, her eyes calm, but her mind full of worry. Elias found her sitting alone near the observation dome later that day. He knew something was wrong the moment he saw her. "You're quiet today," he said gently. She nodded. "I received a message from the High Guard. They want me to stop seeing you. They think I've gone too far." Elias sat beside her. "Do you believe that?" She looked at him for a long moment. "No, but they have power. If they act, it could bring danger to both sides." Just then, an alarm sounded through the horizon. Red lights flashed. "Unknown ship approaching," said the voice over the speaker. "High energy signature detected." Elias and Ilari rushed to the control room. On the screen, a large black ship appeared. It had no name, no symbols, but it was clearly Varelian design, sharp, smooth, and fast. Captain Mora stood at the front with her officers. "Identify that ship," he ordered. "It's not responding to messages," said a technician. Ilari stepped forward. "It's the Silari Claw, a war-class ship from the Varelian High Guard. They are not here for peace." "Why would they come here now?" Mora asked. "They believe I have broken tradition," Ilari answered. "They see my connection with Elias as a threat." The warship moved closer. A message finally came through. A cold voice spoke. "Commander Ilari, return to Varelia. Cut all ties with the human translator, or we will take action." The room fell silent. Elias stared at the screen. "They're serious," Captain Mora frowned. "We won't let them take you. You're part of our peace mission." Ilari stood straight. "If I return now, it will undo everything we've built. They will use fear to stop future bonds between our worlds." Mora asked, "Then what do you suggest?" Ilari looked at Elias, then back at the captain. "I must make a choice, and so must Elias." Later, in a quiet room, Elias sat with Ilari. "They're threatening war," he said, his voice heavy. "Over us?" Ilari nodded. "They fear what they don't understand." Elias looked at her. "Do you regret meeting me?" She shook her head. "No, I have never spoken so freely in my life. You showed me something Varelia had forgotten, the power of honest words." He smiled slightly. "And you showed me something too. That connection doesn't need to be loud to be strong." She took a deep breath. "But if I stay, there could be battle. If I leave, peace will become fear again." Elias stood up. "And let's find another way." That night, Elias went to Captain Mora with a plan. It was risky, but there was hope. They would send a secret signal to a Varelian elder, one of the few voices respected by both sides. Including the High Guard, the elder lived far away on a peaceful crystal moon called Nyrith, a neutral place, a place where truth could be spoken without weapons. "If we reach Nyrith, maybe the elder can help," Elias said. Captain Mora agreed. "We'll get you there, but quietly." Before dawn, Elias and Ilari boarded a small stealth vessel. The ship was quiet and hidden, flying away from the horizon while the High Guard warship watched the main cruiser. Only a few officers knew about the planned dot as the ship flew into deep space. Ilari looked at Elias. "Are you afraid?" she asked. "Yes," he replied, "but I'd rather be afraid with you than safe without you." Ilari gave him a soft smile. She reached out and gently placed her hand over his. "We may not be warriors," she said, "but we are not weak." They both looked out into the stars ahead. Their journey to Nerith had begun. The stealth ship moved quietly through the stars. Inside the small vessel, Elias and Ilari sat side by side, their eyes fixed on the glowing map in front of them. Their goal was clear: reach Nerith, the crystal moon where the wise Varelian elder lived. If they could reach him, there was still a chance to stop the rising danger between the two races. The journey was not easy. To avoid being seen by the Varelian High Guard, they had to take a longer path. They passed through strange space fields, silent meteor clouds, and old abandoned satellite routes. Every turn was risky. Elias checked the system again. "Still no signs of pursuit," he said, trying to sound calm. Ilari looked at him. "They may still find us." "The High Guard does not give up easily," he nodded slowly. "I know. But I believe in our path." Ilari turned her gaze back to the stars. Her voice was quiet but steady. "Elias, I have never left a mission before. I have never broken orders." "You didn't break them," Elias said gently. "You followed your heart." She looked at him. "That is not always a safe thing to follow." Elias gave her a soft smile. "Sometimes the unsafe path leads to something more meaningful." A small silence followed. There was something growing between them, stronger than before. Not just curiosity, not just respect, something deeper. Something neither had spoken out loud, yet. Hours later, the ship shook slightly. Elias checked the scanner. "We're entering Nerith's outer field. The moon is just ahead." Through the window, they could see it. A glowing silver moon surrounded by crystal rings. Light bounced off its surface like gentle waves. It was beautiful, peaceful, and quiet. "Prepare for landing," Ilari said. They guided the ship to a soft, rocky surface. As the engine stopped, a light wind brushed against the windows. Strange birds flew above them, shining in colors like soft fire. Ilari stepped out first. Her boots touched the ground lightly. Elias followed. The air smelled clean and fresh. A small path of glowing stones led them toward a cave built into the side of a mountain. Ilari's voice was calm but respectful. "This is where the elder lives. His name is Sarenvel. He was once a guide to our leaders. Now he is a keeper of balance." They entered the cave. It was quiet and cool. Crystals lined the walls, glowing with soft blue light. At the center of the room sat a tall, older Varelian with a long silver robe and deep blue eyes. He opened his eyes slowly as they approached. "Commander Ilari," he said, his voice like a slow song. "You have brought a human." Elias stepped forward and bowed slightly. "I'm Elias Hart." Sarenvel studied him for a long moment. "I have heard of you, the human who whispered truth and changed the commander's path." Elias said nothing. Ilari spoke. "Elder, we come with hope. There is danger rising. The High Guard sees our friendship as weakness. But I believe this bond can bring peace." Sarenvel nodded. "And what do you wish from me?" "To speak," she said. "To ask for your voice, your wisdom, before war breaks all we have built." The elder stood slowly. "Then let us speak." Hours passed inside the glowing cave. The three of them spoke of many things: culture, fear, change, and the unknown power of emotion. Elias shared his journey, his thoughts, and his feelings. He told Sarenvel how he had never meant to cause trouble. He had only spoken from the heart. Ilari explained how those words made her question everything she had been taught. She had always believed Varelians must be distant and logical. But Elias showed her that being open did not mean being weak. Sarenvel listened carefully. Finally, he spoke. "In the old times, Varelians connected through energy. Now we fear even the light of another's heart. You both have walked a path of honesty, even with danger close behind. That is strength." Elias looked at him with hope. "Then, will you help us?" Sarenvel nodded slowly. "Yes, I will speak for peace. But we must return together. I will face the High Guard and remind them of what we have forgotten, that peace is not silence, and unity is not weakness." As they left the cave, the sky above was dark and full of stars. Elias looked at Ilari. You were amazing in there. She smiled softly. I was only honest. You taught me that. They stood there for a moment, quiet and close. The wind blew gently around them. Elias, Ilari said, there is something I feel, and I no longer wish to hide it. He looked at her, heart beating fast. I do not know what the future will bring, she said. But if I must walk through it with someone, I would choose you. Elias didn't speak. He just stepped closer and gently took her hand and under. The stars of Nyrith, something new was born, not just between them, but for both their worlds. Months had passed since the great meeting at the orbiting station. The peace agreement between Earth and Veralia had been signed. It was not perfect, but it was real. And that was enough to start something new. On the quiet moon of Velmara, the first human Verelian Unity colony was rising. The buildings were made from a mix of earth steel and Verelian crystal. The air was fresh, the sky was filled with soft blue clouds, and the sound of laughter echoed in the distance. Both human and Verelian voices together. Children of both species played in the gardens. Scientists shared knowledge. Artists created. Beauty from two worlds. Soldiers were no longer guarding borders, but helping build homes. At the center of it all stood Elias Hart and Commander Ilari. They were no longer just a translator and a commander. They were leaders, symbols, and friends, and maybe something more. On a quiet evening, Elias stood near the edge of the colony's hilltop, watching the sun set over the crystal lakes. The light turned gold, then soft purple, just like the stories Ilari once told him about her home. He heard soft footsteps behind him. It was her. Ilari stood beside him, her silver robe gently moving in the breeze. Her eyes, glowing blue, looked out at the horizon. This place is beautiful, she said. Elias nodded. It's not just the land. It's what it means. We built this together. She looked at him. Would you believe me if I said I never thought I'd be here, standing beside a human, feeling this way? He smiled. I would believe it, because I never believed it would happen to me either. There was silence, but it was peaceful, full of understanding. Then Ilari stepped closer. There is something I wish to say, Elias, she said, her voice soft. You spoke your truth many times. I listened, I learned, and now I speak mine. Elias turned to her fully, his heart beating faster. Ilari gently reached out and placed her hand on his chest, just over his heart. It was a Verelian tradition, a gesture of deep connection. In Verelian culture, she explained, this is how we make a soul promise. It is not just about love. It is about trust, future, and standing side by side no matter what. Elias placed his hand over hers, and in human tradition, he said, smiling warmly, we give our word and ask a question. She looked into his eyes. He took a breath and asked, softly, Ilari, will you marry me? She did not blink. She did not pause. I will, she said simply. The Unity colony celebrated that night. Humans and Verelians danced, sang, and shared stories. Lights filled the sky, not from war, but from joy. Even Saren, Vel, the wise elder, sent his blessing from afar. The marriage was not like anything either world had ever seen. There were no fancy dresses or heavy traditions. Instead, it was simple, a shared promise beneath the stars. Elias wore a dark blue suit with a small crystal on his chest. Gifted by Ilari, Ilari wore a soft silver robe with a human-style ring on her finger. Gifted by Elias. They stood on the central platform, hands joined, surrounded by the people they had brought together. Captain Mora gave a short speech. This is more than a wedding. This is a message to the galaxy that peace is possible when hearts speak honestly. Ilari and Elias looked at each other. Their journey had started with a whisper. A simple sentence spoken in silence. She's so beautiful. I wonder if she'd marry me. At the time, it was just a thought, a small dream, but now that dream was real. Later, as the stars shined above and the celebration slowed, Elias and Ilari sat on a quiet bench near the garden. The lights danced on the water. The air was soft and full of life. Elias turned to her. What do you think our future looks like? He asked. She smiled. It will not be easy. There will still be fear, still be questions, but also there will be hope and love, he asked playfully. She nodded. Yes, and love. He leaned back, eyes closed, feeling the peace of that moment. She gently added, and maybe children who speak both our languages, Elias laughed quietly. Now, that will be a translation challenge. They both laughed, not as a human and an alien, not as two different beings, but as one. Together. The ship left Nirith's surface quietly. Inside, Elias, Ilari, and the wise elder Sarenvel sat together as stars moved slowly outside the windows. No. One spoke for a while. The journey ahead was dangerous. But this time they had hope. The elder had agreed to speak before both sides, humans and Varelians, to stop the fear and misunderstanding before it turned into war. Elias looked at Ilari. She seemed calm, but he knew she was thinking deeply. She had broken tradition, left her people, and stood beside a human, all for something she believed in. He reached out, gently placing his hand near hers. Ilari looked at him and smiled softly. Do you still feel the same, Elias? She asked. Even after everything? He nodded. I feel even more now. Her eyes glowed a little brighter. She didn't need to say anything more. The bond between them had grown stronger than words. As they reached the UESS horizon, they were met with surprise. The crew had not expected their return so soon, and not with a Varelian elder. Captain Mora stood at the entrance. You made it back, she said with a smile of relief. And you brought a voice of peace. Sarenvel bowed politely. I have come to speak, not to command, but I believe my words still carry weight. Inside the ship, a message was sent to the Varelian High Guard. A large meeting was arranged between both sides. The location was a neutral orbiting station above a silent planet called Juresen, where no weapons were allowed. Ships from Earth and Varelia arrived. Leaders from both worlds gathered. Tension was high. The meeting room was grand and quiet. Bright lights lit the center floor where both species sat in circles. Officers, diplomats, and scientists were all present. In the middle stood Sarenvel, tall and calm. Beside him stood Ilari and Elias, two symbols of something new. Vel raised his voice. In ancient times, we Varelians believed that balance was the key to peace. But now, some fear the unknown. They see change as danger. They see a bond between a human and a Varelian as a threat. He paused and looked at the leaders. But I see something else. I see understanding. I see hope. These two, Elias Hart and Commander Ilari, did not build weapons. They built trust. They did not lie. They spoke honestly. That is not weakness. That is strength. A few Varelian warriors shifted in their seats. One of them, a tall and serious officer named Kern Solis, stood. We fear losing our identity, Elder. If we open our hearts to others, what remains of us? Vel answered, Your identity is not broken by kindness. It grows stronger when shared. If we only protect our past, we lose our future. Then, to everyone's surprise, Ilari stepped forward. She spoke clearly and with purpose. I chose to stand beside Elias not because he is human, but because he saw me as more than a soldier. He listened. He respected. He made me feel something I had forgotten, freedom of heart. Elias felt her words deeply. He then stepped forward, too. I never meant to change your people, he said. I only wanted to learn. But what started with one whisper became something much bigger. I care for Ilari, not just as a friend, but as someone I'd want beside me. Always. A silent wave moved through the room. He took a deep breath and said clearly, Yes, I said I wondered if she'd marry me. I didn't expect anyone to hear it, but now that everyone has, I'll say it again. I would be proud if she ever said yes. The room was silent. Then a small, glowing tear fell from Ilari's eye, a Varelian sign of deep emotion. She stepped beside Elias and looked at the leaders. I do not say yes today, she said gently, but I do not say no. Because I believe in what this bond can bring. And if it brings peace, then it is worth everything. After the meeting, things began to change. The High Guard didn't fully agree, but they chose not to act with force. Peace talks restarted. A special colony was planned on a quiet moon, where humans and Varelians could live and learn side by side. Elias and Ilari were chosen as the first joint leaders of this place. They stood together on the command deck, watching the first lights of the colony rise. "This isn't the end," Elias said. "No," Ilari replied, "this is only the beginning."